We thought, well, he'll do the kickoff like a sort of celebratory thing, and then he'll kind of leave the pitch.
Yeah.
But he stayed on. And he wouldn't leave the pitch for the first 2 minutes. And then they attacked down his wing. And I thought, this is it. I'm going to watch my dad get killed now on a rugby pitch.
Hello amateurs, welcome to episode 18 of the Amateur Rugby Podcast, here to help soothe your Sunday morning hangover with some sublime rugby chat about the grassroots of the game. I'm your host Tim, and today I'm in Quito, Ecuador, and like any South American in a city, you can probably hear lots of beeping horns, maybe a barking dog every now and again, but that's just what life is like here. I know it seems like I'm on holiday all the time, but I've been working ever since I arrived. And don't forget, I'm a professional web developer, so if you or someone you know needs a website, please get in touch. Last week's episode with James Griffiths has been widely appreciated. Griff and I covered some very important topics, and we're both very proud of what we put out there. There was some lovely feedback like this from Ed Warner. I thought your and Griff's discussion of men's mental health and concussion was spot on, and it's great that you viewed it through the lens of a sport that is so often viewed as macho and too tough to talk about feelings. Thanks a lot, Ed. Hopefully discussing these things more openly will help break down some of the stigma which is still attached to such issues. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so if you'd like to get in touch, you can do so via email at hello@amateurrugbypodcast.com. But my guest this week is Stephen Corlett. Taff and I played together for many years, bound up in the front row for both Old Colfeians and Kent. This interview was recorded in November of 2019 in Amsterdam, where he's now living. And we discussed a multitude of topics and some favourite stories ranging from why amateur rugby is a hotbed of creative thinking through to the magic of touring and the mysterious legend of the Kakadu Gnat. For that and much more, please give it up for Stephen Corlett. Stephen Corlett, welcome to the Amateur Rugby Podcast.
Thanks very much, Tim. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to be here in Amsterdam, your place of residence.
Yeah, welcome to Amsterdam.
How long have you been here now?
8 years since we moved back, but I've been here in total for about 10 and a half years.
Nice. And I'm staying with you at the moment. I've just had the joy of wrestling your sons for about an hour this afternoon.
Yeah, much appreciated. Anything you could do to exhaust them is gratefully received. Thank you.
Yeah, it was enjoyable. It was
Thank
good.
you.
It was
Thank
good. Okay, let's get on to some rugby stuff. But first, about you. Your nickname is Taff.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Yeah, because I don't have a Welsh accent, but I'm known as Taff, and it comes about when I was at school, a Colf school, and my mum and dad used to come and watch me, and my mum has a very strong Welsh accent, although some of the boys at Colf's thought she might be Polish. That's how smart they were. But anyway, she had a Welsh accent, and so she would shout, "Come on, Stephen! Come on, Stephen!" And then obviously the lads at school, and we were smart lads, thought, this is a Welsh voice. The ones who didn't think it was Polish, and called me Taff, and that was it. So from about the age of 14, I was Taff, and I'm quite proud of my Welsh roots, and I go back to Wales each year for holidays and that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm just known as Taff by pretty much everyone now, including my wife and that sort of thing.
It's just the way it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Nickname for life.
Nickname for life. Yeah, and it's good. There's been, it could have been worse.
Yeah. And you support the Welsh team?
I will always support the Welsh team, and when they're playing England, I want rugby to be the winner.
Really?
Yeah.
Split down the middle?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. Tough.
Yeah, tough, yeah. I used to be a lot more Welsh, and obviously about it, but then I got thrown in the bath at the Colfeian Rugby Club when I was 17 for having a Welsh shirt on. I think it was the year Ian Evans scored. Remember, he ran past Rory Underwood, scored. I jumped up and down in that nice Welsh shirt, and then about 40 seconds later, I was dumped in the bath, and that was that. And then I was a bit more split loyalties after that.
Yeah, because I remember we went to the game at Wembley when Scott
Gibbs scored.
Yeah, and I'm sure you were very much in the Welsh camp that day.
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, it was I think now I'm a bit more split loyalties. Okay. I was a bit more militant back in those days.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so let's go back to a little bit about your playing history. Like, where did you first start playing, and what got you to pick up the ball?
I started at Colf School when I moved there at the age of 9. So I'd played football before then, and then just I was one of those kids who were like, oh, it's a ball sport, I'll do that. And then they said, right, we need someone he needs to be a little bit short and stocky to play hooker. So obviously that was me. And then when they said, right, that's right in the middle, and you're probably going to be talking a lot and be in charge of a lot of things like line-outs, that was even more me.
Yeah.
And I kind of played there ever since, although I did a little bit here and there at scrum half, and I just like playing rugby. That was my thing. And then I played at school, went to the Colts at Colfs, which was great, Old Colfeians, and just stayed at Colfeians ever since, really. Yeah.
Mm. And we met through my friend, or our friend, I should say, Matt Townsend at Warwick University. But prior to that, you'd spent a year at Oxford. So I'm interested to hear about your rugby experience from there.
Oh, right. Yes. So I had a year at Oxford where I spectacularally failed my exams at the end of the first year.
How spectacular is spectacular?
By about 2%. Yeah, just enough.
Yeah.
And the main reason was I picked the wrong course, which was a statistics and algebra course to take, which, if anyone knows me, is the biggest mistake anyone could ever make.
Yeah, I just pulled a really funny face when you said that, because it doesn't...
Anyway, it was part of a bigger thing that I'd sort of... thought I could do and I couldn't. And anyway, the playing rugby there was fantastic because it was essentially a professional club with all these graduates playing. And the team had, so the fly half with Gareth Rees, the Wasps Canada, he was brilliant. We had Tyrone Howe on the wing, Spencer Bromley in the centres. You had like a load of people who played international rugby. And I was just, a fresher playing. But it was a fantastic experience and opened my eyes a lot to the quality of rugby you could play. I mean, I played decent rugby at Colts, but this was just another level. And one of the big things there that it taught me was one of the coaches they had was a guy called Pierre Villepreux, who was the French coach. If you remember the late 80s, early 90s, French rugby was all beautiful. There was, it was in terms of rhythm, the way the ball moved between players, the offloads, the way they saw space. And Villepreux just had you training like that the whole time. He had all training sessions at around 60 to 70%, and the whole thing was about playing with your eyes. So the whole time you had to be able to look up and know exactly where the opposition were. And for someone like me who liked playing with the ball and running with the ball, it was absolutely brilliant, and I really enjoyed that. And so I played for the second team, played for the under-21s. I benched once for the Blues, I really enjoyed it. And then of course it all came crashing down when I failed my exams and had to leave. So, but the good news after that was I ended up at Warwick, and how sliding doors it happens is next thing you know, you're kind of at a training session with some really great players, some good lads, and that's where I met Matt and all the other guys, and obviously you knew Matt from back in Cheltenham, and that's how we got to meet each other through those days.
And then on the back of that, you managed to drag like most of that team back to Old Colfeians after university finished. So I'm just interested in your tactics that you might have used to achieve that goal.
Yeah, I think Matt covered this in one of the other podcasts a little bit. But basically, when we come to the end of our university days at Warwick, and we'd really enjoyed it, we really enjoyed being together. And I thought this would be good if we could just stay together. That would be fun, playing rugby. And so everyone was kind of moving to London, and I said, well, we could all play together in London. They went, oh, this is good, because they were West Country boys, and they weren't quite up to knowing the roots of London. And I managed to get a load of them to come over to Colfeians. And I knew that basically the way that we saw playing rugby and the way we saw being in a rugby club was how Colfeians did.
Right.
And I knew that they would fit.
Yeah.
But I also knew that they were better than the standard that we had. And I thought, this is going to be good here. We can have the right type of people and take us to the next level. And so very quickly we'd established, a great team with a load of mates.
Yeah.
And it, as everyone knows, it doesn't really get much better than that.
Yeah.
And then as more and more people, kind of were connected to me, and then Matt, and then Dave, and people like that, they kept coming down. And so, that's where Hyder came. And obviously, you were there as well, and that was why the team and that whole period in our lives was so special, because it was a genuine play with your mates experience, and at a good level. So we were all playing higher than we'd played before, except probably Hyder, but we all sort of got to his level. So I think from that point of view, it was a genuine kind of great moment for us all.
Yeah, and quite a rare one, I think. We felt like it was kind of special at the time, and the more, I guess, the game's gone on and become, particularly at that sort of level, very much a semi-professional environment, this idea of playing actually with your mates, not just mates that you've met over the last season or so, it becomes rarer and rarer, I think.
Yeah, we were just at the right time where you could get away with having a job. We all had jobs, none of us were paid, but play at a semi-professional level with other teams that were getting paid in the West Country, etc., and get away with it. So for us, it was a perfect storm. And yet, of course, now as teams change every season at that level and new players are brought in, they have to create a team atmosphere. They have to create a bond, and they have to have bonding sessions and things like that. And we never needed to do that. We were already in that mould. What we needed to do was practice catching and passing and tackling.
Tackling more importantly than anything, I think.
And so that was all right. We could do that. But the idea of us having each other's backs or wanting to be in the room together, wanting to be on the field together was never in doubt.
Yeah, for sure. That being said, there was plenty of team bonding that went on in a kind of natural sort of way, and especially on tours. So I'm just interested in your take on touring from a young man.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a great affection for touring because and Colfeian touring, but just generally amateur rugby touring obviously is legendary, and every club has its own sort of touring history and great moments, etc. And for me, I think, the opportunity to go and see the world with a bunch of lads and play your rugby was always, for me, it was a great pleasure. I first toured when I was 16 in 91 to Amiens. And I look back now, and 16 years old, what was I doing on that tour? And why had my parents let me go? So I think now when I look at like a 24-year-old going on tour with us, I think, he's a bit of a young lad, isn't he? But I was 16 and turned up there, and I was really going just to sort of tag along, and the first team hooker, Di Andrew, was going to play, and he was one of the best hookers ever. And I remember we got there, I'd been laughing so much already, and I just thought this was the greatest day ever, this first day on tour. And I'd only been on the bus, and it was still brilliant. And then we got off the bus, and he walked into the hotel, walked up the stairs, and fell straight down the stairs and tore his ligaments. And so then it was like, and everyone went, right, Taff, you're going to play tomorrow. And so now suddenly I'm, oh my God, I'm playing, I'm 16, and all this. And anyway, by then within about 2 hours of that, we were in a bar, and one of the guys had become very mouthy, and and they tied him to a chair and put him in the middle of the street, and all the cars in this city centre were having to drive around him. And I just thought, this is unbelievable. What have I done? Why am I here? So anyway, it was a great experience for a 16-year-old, and then, that was only a 2-3 day tour. So when the opportunity came around, and the club had some experience of doing longer tours to Zimbabwe and Canada previously, they did a tour to Argentina in 93. And so going to that was a real wonderful experience. We were the first team out there since, except England, since the Falklands.
Ah, right. How long was the trip?
3 weeks.
Right.
So you're going as a
proper tour.
Proper tour.
Yeah.
And we played in Buenos Aires. We played upstate. We played also in Brazil, in Rio. And it was fantastic, incredible rugby. It was also, for a young guy, a great experience seeing a different culture. Scrummaging as a hooker in Argentina was just, that was a real eye opener. It was genuinely as hard as you could think. And of course, because of the Falklands, when we played up country, they were burning the Union Jack by the side of the pitch and everything. So it was quite an intimidating atmosphere. But it was also wonderful.
How old were you? at that time?
I would be 18.
Right. Okay.
And and of course, what was great though was that the way that they treat rugby, they call it the 3 times. I think I'm right in saying. The first time is when you meet each other, the opposition. The second time is the game, and the third time is the eating and drinking afterwards. And that was just fantastic. The steak and everything was brilliant. So touring for me has always been a great pleasure. And Australia in 2001 with you, all of those kind of experiences are fantastic. And I think probably less and less an opportunity now to take 3 weeks off from work would be really hard. But I've always found the opportunity to go. You see the world, you're with your mates, the games. And all the stuff that goes with it's fantastic, and that's my one thing about this has been my great affliction is I love tour rugby. I love playing.
Yeah.
And not everyone loves tour rugby.
Yeah, I'm in the latter camp. I have no time to play tour rugby at all, but I understand it has to happen.
Yeah, I take that rugby as seriously as I take any rugby, and it winds people up.
Yeah, me.
Yeah. And also, so what will happen is there'll be a match day, and the first thing I'll think about, I'll look at, I'll go, what time is the match? And they'll say the kickoff will be 5 o'clock, and I think, oh God, because you know what that means? There's going to be a lunch before it, and everyone's going to be hammered, and no one will have enough focus, and everyone's going to be wasted. And I've been on those tours, and you have as well, where someone's got caught with 2 drinks, bottle of limoncello and a glass of limoncello. And they're like, oh, good, he's starting the second row in about 3 hours. But once he sleeps it off, he'll be fine. And my heart sinks when I see that 5 o'clock kickoff. So all I'm looking for on the itinerary is what time is kickoff, so that we can minimise the amount of people who are going to be drinking before the kickoff.
The amount of damage.
Yeah. Because I'm already thinking, this is the biggest game of my life. And I remember shouting at in Toulon at Lukey Walden, after he did well to still be on his feet. He passed the ball on the floor, and I shouted, "Don't let your mates down, Luke." And he looked at me and he thought, "What, you absolute wally? We're playing a tour game." And I'm like, "No, this is everything. This moment." So I know I'm the one with the sickness, and everyone else is okay. But it's and I still think about the tries I scored on tour.
Yeah.
I count them in my career, like Pele scoring in training. They're still on my...
They count.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I know it's a sickness.
Yeah, so let's go back a couple more things about tour there. So you mentioned the 2 drinks rules.
Yeah.
I'd just like you to expand on that, because I love tour drinking rules. And at Colfeians, they were very simple, but effective.
Yeah, so it says that the classic left-handed drinking only. And then there's the slightly more technical 2 drinks rule. So the 2 drinks rule is very simple. You can't hold 2 drinks. You can hold 3 drinks, 4 drinks, 5 drinks, 1 drink. You can't hold 2 drinks. Where it becomes interesting is, what is a drink? So 2 glasses of beer, 2 drinks. A glass of beer and a jug of beer is 2 drinks. A cup of water and a cup of tea is 2 drinks. So whenever you're caught with the 2 drinks, you have to drink them. It then becomes a case of, it's secret ops then.
Yeah.
Because you have people dropping a can into your pocket and saying, "I have 2 drinks." And you're like, "No, false call. Check your pocket." Right, I hate you. You're demated. You have things like holding a can or a drink and moving another drink with your foot. 2 drinks. You have a drink in one hand, a tube of toothpaste in the other. 2 drinks. Can't drink a toothpaste. Yes, you can. And so things like that. And of course, you got caught famously as you turned up in Australia, because obviously you're a little bit excited when you turn up late on tour.
Yeah, I was about a week late because of my brother's wedding, which, well, I've forgiven him, but it's So I was a week late. Yeah, so carry on.
And we were in a wonderful bar in Sydney, the Fish Bar. I can't remember, on the other side of the thing. "Hey, Timmy, you're here," and you remember it well. You walked in, great. Here's a jug.
Yeah. Well, I think what I did is I volunteered to go and get the drinks from the bar.
Classic.
Yeah, so I walked back with 2 jugs of beer.
Whee!
So being fresh on tour, I managed to see them off. They weren't big jugs. They were like 2, maybe 3 pointers tops.
Yeah.
So, within a reasonable amount of time, I managed to get through them.
Yeah.
But then I was a bit drunk.
Yeah.
So I did it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
then,
again.
And again, yeah. And so once you'd done it, 3 times, that was bad. And then you were in bed quite quickly.
Yeah.
I remember in Scotland, we had John Hobbleday with a shot glass and a bottle of whiskey. And he poured the whiskey just into the little shot glass as the whole of the bus looked at him. And everyone went, "Ray," and then everyone went, "Oh no!
I wish we hadn't
seen that." So those sort of moments, those sort of rules are great.
Yeah,
and you end up over 3 weeks becoming completely. That's how you live your life, in fear of that sort of thing.
Fear, but also ultimate discipline. If you're
absolutely
that way inclined.
Absolute discipline. Yeah.
So you mentioned the Toulon tour as well there, and there was a lovely moment on that tour. You played on the same pitch as your dad.
Yes, oldest Colfeian ever. My dad, Clive Touche Corlett, he came along and he did the kick-off. He must have been 74.
I thought his leg might come off.
Yeah. 74. And then we thought, well, he'll do the kickoff like a sort of celebratory thing, and then he'll kind of leave the pitch.
Yeah.
But he stayed on. And he wouldn't leave the pitch for the first 2 minutes. And then they attacked down his wing. And I thought, this is it. I'm going to watch my dad get killed near on a rugby pitch. And he waved his arms, and the bloke dropped the ball. So he made one more tackle than I did on that game, and he left the pitch. But yeah, he's very proud of that.
Yeah,
he played that. Yeah, I think that's the oldest ever Colfeian player. Yeah,
it was a nice moment, but I remember everybody on the pitch being so aware of what was happening, and people were like charging across to try and make the tackle first.
Because the guy was running at him. That was right. Yeah. Oh my God, this man's gonna. Yeah. But he did it. He got it, and then we just quickly ushered him from the pitch. Yeah. No, good. That was a good tour.
So is there anything else about tours and what makes tours great, or sometimes...
Well, I think also the other thing about them is you have a group of people that you think you know very well, and there's always people who are like, wow, that person's really surprised me, etc. And I think that's a wonderful bit of it. That's kind of the highlight bit of it. The low bit, obviously, is, for me, is like you just, by the end of it, you hate each other. 3 weeks, that's it, you're done. And I remember in Australia, we were up in Darwin, and I still use the phrase now, the Kakadu Gnat, and it's a phrase that we were told that there was this gnat in Darwin that would bite you and basically debilitate you, and so a couple of the lads, one of Ollie Chapman being one, for a couple of days didn't say a single word, didn't speak because they were so done with tour, and so it became it was clear that he'd suffered from the Kakadu Gnat, and still today. When I phone home and I say, how are the boys, to my 2 kids, my wife will say, well, Kakadu Gnat here in the house. We're absolutely done for. So yeah, the low points on tour are pretty low. And I'm a good one for getting throwing my toys out the pram. I've been, for, those classic sort of tour courts, etc. I'm always up for spitting my dummy out. I had to walk around for a week with a child's dummy around my neck in Australia, I think, after losing my shit with somebody.
Do you remember what that was about?
It's usually someone's pushed my buttons in a perfect way, and I haven't had enough sleep.
Or not taking the rugby seriously enough, maybe.
Yeah, it might have been that. But yeah, there's a lot of pictures of me with a baby's dummy around my neck. Yeah, but the highs and the lows of tour are just are incredible. It's fantastic, and the people obviously you meet, and as I said, the friendships that you've already got, but then the new ones you make as well from some lad who you might not know from the third team, or one of the older fellas who's come along, and suddenly you're like, these are the greatest people I've ever known.
Yeah.
So
until you hate them at the end.
Until you hate them at the end, you never want to see them again.
Yeah.
No, it's been fantastic. And as I said, less and less probably at amateur rugby you can do those big 3-week tours, but at the same time, even if it's the weekends or things like that, they still provide a great opportunity for those, to relive some old memories for us anyway. Yeah,
this theme has come up in terms of how the world's changed since those days. Back in the sort of 90s was probably or the early 2000s was the last time you could really do that kind of thing. And it's shown itself in the terms of like playing numbers generally down, teams not being able to put as many sides out. But this is another example where there's just much more going on in people's lives. So, a 3-week tour for an amateur club is it's almost a non-starter now. Yeah, because a lot of people who are working, you can't get 3 weeks off, and especially if you've got families and things like that, it's just not going to happen. But I think the idea of touring, even if it's done at a small level, is still vital to a club's feeling of camaraderie. Even if it's just you're going away to a different part of the UK, or you're going just across to Paris or Amsterdam or whatever, those kind of trips are important for the culture of the club and its stories. And every club has its legends and its stories and its famous moments and stuff. And those things are vital then for people to talk about for years to come. Yeah, it becomes the fabric of the club. Doesn't it? Those stories. Absolutely. I mean, the story. I remember the famous story in Zimbabwe where Nick Evans just playing Great Balls of Fire naked in the clubhouse, and he just walked in with just a Colfeian bow tie on, sat at the piano and played Great Balls of Fire. Those sort of things have like become legendary. Those moments. The more, I think any amateur club,
has to put effort into making these things happen. And we've been lucky, we've got people as well who do that. But it does take effort now, and because people have so many things in their lives, getting 30 blokes together for a weekend outside of the season is hard work. But the more you can do it, I always believe the more you get out of the long term, because you're going to make some amazing memories and those things, and get some good stash.
Yeah, good stash. Tour stash is always good to have. Yeah, cool. Okay, but let's move on to some more rugby stuff. You were a hooker. I was a tight head when we played in the same team.
Yeah.
And was it like 6 or 7 seasons we probably played together, something like that. And with our friend Matthew Quilter, we were lucky enough to go and represent Kent for a season. So I just wanted to hear from you what your thoughts were on that and what that experience was like.
Well, I think when you've got a front row that kind of just seems to work, and we were very lucky, like we kind of, it worked with us. Quilter Corlett, Tunnicliffe was kind of, everyone, in terms of the way we played the game, it just sort of worked as a trio. And so playing for Kent was a great honour for us, I think.
100%.
And I never thought I'd play that sort of level. I remember being a kid and watching Kent's senior team and thinking, God, look at these big blokes. They were so good.
Impressive.
Yeah, impressive. So getting selected was, on the back really of being able to play with you and Quilts. And it was fantastic. And then, you were suddenly playing at, some pretty high, against some decent players, not super high, but a decent level. And it was great, and I really enjoyed it. We played up in Fylde, didn't we?
Yeah.
Against Lancashire. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm not really one for the roughy tufty.
Not so much.
And they talk about the world, rugby being about piano players and piano pushers. I was a piano player in a world of pushing, and up there was a lot of pushing going on. And I remember we played against them, and the guy opposite me was a guy called Martin Scott, who played for Scotland, played for Oral, proper, and he was massive. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember the front row?
I do remember. They were big.
They were big
across the board. They were huge.
Yeah, and I was too small really. I'd lost a bit too much weight, because I needed to be bulkier. And anyway, hit the first scrum, and I think he's not got a good position here. I'm going to have this. So I took the first one against the head. Great.
Yeah, we're in.
We're in. That's good. Run to the next scrum. Boom. And again, woof. Fast feet. Here we go. This is easy.
Showing them the way here.
International hooker.
Yeah.
Third scrum. Oh. And I don't know if you remember, but I got hit so hard by something, and then you and Quilts carried me like I was on a washing line as I was dazed to the next ruck, and left me in the next ruck to come to. And all I remember is coming to in the next ruck, not even in the scrum. Yeah. And I didn't move my feet for the rest of the game. Just kept it right as far back as I could.
Sorry, sir.
Oh my God! Wow, he hit me hard, and yeah. So, but playing for Kent was great. It was good fun, and it was only on the back really of the rest of the of what you and Quilts had done, and we were good. We were there en masse really as a three.
as a gang, and I think that was what really. Like, it would have been great to play anyway. Like, if it just been me, like Griff went and played a few years before, and he was the only one from Old Colfeians at the time. Yeah. But to do it as a front row, made it really, really special.
And we all took the piss out of Griff because now he had new mates at Kent, your real friends at Kent.
Yeah, and we got the pleasure of obviously meeting all the guys from Westcombe Park and Canterbury and all those places.
Yeah, can't remember. Yeah, brilliant blokes. Yeah, no, because of course I'm very much into I love my group.
Yeah,
and I'm not really I'm keen to meet all these new people.
Yeah, you're not like, we'll bring them all in, and
No, I like my crew. Yeah. These are my people. There's an old saying, isn't it? Hell is other people, and that's how I feel about things sometimes. So the idea of all these other people was always a bit of oh God, I've got to meet some new people now. Yeah. But of course, I mean, I'm the idiot. Everyone's lovely, and it was fantastic. But so being at Kent with my mates was pretty special. Yeah,
it was good times. But then you kind of what time did you stop playing? What age? Like 29 or 30 was it?
Yeah, like 29. I played solidly from 93 through to 2004, and I'd had maybe 2 injuries in a decade, and playing first team at Colfeians for 5 years. I think I missed 2 games, and I was actually a bit burnt out. So I remember having a moment where I thought, I don't want to play anymore. I'm bored of this. I'm not enjoying it. It was just exhausting. And, of course, you're working as well. So for a time you can put everything into rugby, but at some point work also says, right, you need to, knuckle down a bit. So I thought I've kind of had enough of it for a bit. And in retrospect, although I would have hated it if someone had said, we're rotating you out for a month, I'd have said, no. It would have done me the world of good, because I decided, actually, I'm going to leave London and go to Amsterdam, and I moved to Amsterdam for the first time, 2004, and just kind of went away from it. And but it was definitely on the back of just being mentally tired of playing and training 5 days a week, playing, recovery, go again, and I was 29 really when I sort of finished, and you miss it ever since, and I played vets and all those things. I do lots of things to try and keep me going, but and that's why the tour rugby, when there's still tours, I'm like, right, what time is the game? This is my game for the year. So, but
check you can still do it.
Yeah, but it was interesting. I don't know whether you felt that as well, but there were, you were so desperate to play and be in the team. The idea of rotating you out for freshness was kind of not really on the agenda, was it?
No, and it happened at Colfeians, and it also happened when I was at Ealing. Right at the end of my career, I started the first 17 games of the season, plus a couple of pre-season games before that, and I was shattered. And as you mentioned there, it was mentally as much as physically. But I would never have asked to be rotated. Never. It's not. I don't think it's in any player's psyche to do that.
We had, we never really had a squad big enough. I think maybe at Ealing you probably did have a squad big enough. But, I was so desperate to play, and I would do anything to be in that team, that in the end, you're just a bit tired after years and years. And I'd have 2 weeks off in the summer and then go back to training again. And my thing was, no one's going to say I didn't train hard enough to be in that position. Even though I knew that there was going to be players who might have been better than me, or be a bit tougher than me, or be a bit stronger than me. That was my thing. And, but yeah, in the end, if I look back now, I wish I'd have had 2 months off as a sabbatical or something, just to freshen up a bit, and it would have done me the world of good. Yeah. But so having said that, leaving London, moving to Amsterdam, and all the other things that happened because of that, I can't regret at all. And I think that, but in terms of my rugby, I probably gave up a bit early in terms of my serious rugby. Yeah,
you definitely. I mean, you certainly would have had a good few years left in the body if you'd given time to recuperate and all that kind of thing.
Because you played Ealing at 36, and you talk about that as being your best year.
Yeah, it was definitely my best year when I felt I was in the best condition to play that I'd ever been. Obviously, you get all that experience as you play and get older, and in the front row, that's so invaluable. But I just had enough training inside me. I'd sort of been taking it really seriously since I was sort of 30, so I'd just got enough weights and strength, and my body had just acclimatised to it all. Yeah, and I just felt that my last year of playing was actually my strongest. Yeah.
And do you look back now and think, if you and we had taken it a bit more seriously at Colfeians at that time, we could have done a lot better? Or do you think we were what we were, and part of our magic was not having some of that professionalism with a big P over the top of it?
I think we might have potentially been better conditioned, but I think we'd have lost something by doing that. Something that was kind of hard to talk about and hard to describe, but it was just our kind of defiant nature that we're still going to compete despite all of these things that we're not doing that all the other teams are.
Yeah, I always think that we were a little bit anti-Roga in a way, both in terms of the type of people we liked. So if, for example, you came in and you were very keen to sing a song about a woman who used to work in Chicago, you probably weren't really for us.
Yeah.
However, if you knew all the verses to The Gambler, or you're able to do magic tricks, you're for us, sunshine. Yeah. And I think that kind of anti-rugger thing was spilled over in every way, including let's not train too hard. Well, having said that, I know that when we were at our best, we did train hard. So we sort of knew where we could push it to. But if you'd have been a bit too, right, here's your strength and conditioning things for the summer, there would have been, I think it'd have been difficult to get buy-in, wouldn't it?
Yeah, certainly for at least half the squad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there have been allegations of like, semi-professionalism, taking it too seriously.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think we'd have lost something from that.
Yeah. I mean, I remember. Do you remember when we'd lost down in Penzance, and we got back into the dressing room, and it was that, and we would put the music on, and there was steps, and we were dancing around to steps, and their coach was going, "What are they doing? Listen to steps. They're taking the piss out of you."
Yeah, we lost by 60 points.
We lost by 6 points. We're having a great time.
Yeah.
That was a fantastic day. Those sort of things, But yeah, so we seemed to, because I think there was just enough natural talent, coupled with some great coaching, coupled with we just had enough professionalism that it seemed to make it work.
Yeah, for sure.
And that must be a challenge for amateur clubs now to get that balance right. I don't know how you felt seeing so many clubs that you've been to, where you're trying to create the right type of atmosphere, but the moment there are things that just stop the balance happening. It could be the money, it could be the wrong type of recruitment, it could be the fact that you've appointed the wrong type of captain or the coach, etc. Trying to get that balance is so difficult.
Yeah, and if there isn't that strong base of culture that we had and fostered at Colfeians, then it's very easy to knock that out of balance and it to go off the rails. So I think, and it comes up time and time and time again, culture of teams is so key. It's probably the most important thing in terms of overall success, I think.
And when you've seen it go wrong, you have to name names, but what are the things that tend to have made it go wrong?
I guess maybe lack of trust in certain people and certain decisions that have been made. So there's, I think in the best teams, you trust each other so well that even if you think maybe that's not the right decision, you go, okay, well, fine, but I do trust you. So let's just go with it and make the best of it. And if there isn't that trust there, then, you can go off script very quickly. And
did you find, though, that obviously the money becomes a thing? Because everyone's sort of aware that there's now some money flowing around. And the moment they go, okay, well, we've got this guy coming in, he's getting more than everyone else. Even though you acknowledge this isn't professional rugby, it still knocks things out? Or is it pretty much everyone's grown up about it?
I think generally everyone's grown up about it. But there's definitely some times when, like a high-profile player will come into a club and they kind of have to be given their chance to play and perform. And I definitely saw it a couple of times when players came in who were kind of high-profile and didn't perform but continued to get chances.
Yeah.
Which, again, that's an example of where you lose trust in the selectors because you haven't picked based on performance, which is what all that anybody wants, really. Yeah,
and we were lucky in that no one was getting paid. You had to pay your subs, as the song reminds us. And and of course, if you did get a high-profile player, like someone would say, "Oh, this bloke's coming down. He's been playing," and everyone go, "Oh, look at him!" And if he didn't perform, he didn't play.
Yeah,
because no one was forced to play him because he was getting paid or anything. It was just like, well, you've got to prove yourself. So I think it's really interesting, that balance at a what you might call an amateur rugby on the cusp of professionalism and professional.
Yeah, essentially, I think the people in charge just have to have like a real strong belief and identity and rigor about what they do and how they talk to people and how they select. And if that's the case, then the money shouldn't be a problem. Yeah. But sometimes
it's a hard balance to make.
It is very hard indeed. Okay, so let's rewind actually way back. Old Colfeians started a minis and juniors section.
Yeah.
And you were like the head coach on the first morning.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear a bit about that and what that experience was like, and then maybe fast forward to potentially doing some coaching in the future.
Oh yeah, so we'd been looking at my dad and a couple of other people who were on the sort of the committee had been talking about we need a junior section because all the clubs in the region, in the area, were having great junior sections and we had nothing. We'd had something some years before, but it wasn't really happening. And so we decided, there was a kind of thing, okay, we're going to do this. And so I sat with my dad and we said, well, here's what we'll do, is we will have the first team coach the minis, because that will be a symbol that it's connected to the first team straight away. And a lot of these kids, their dads are playing in the club or, etc., or they're watching us on the Saturday. So, the first day down there, we got all these 7-year-olds and I'd said to a few of the lads, right, tomorrow you're going to come down and we're going to coach these kids. And we'd all had our, police check and all that. So we'd all been, everything was above board, but there was no one had really planned anything. So I remember one of them had set up a drill that you might do for the first 15, like the crisscross Aussie, squares or whatever. Auckland grid, yeah. We're like, these kids have never, I think that's going to be a bit too tough for them. But yeah, we just basically made it up, and from there it snowballed, and the junior section today is incredibly strong, But for a number of, I think for the first couple of years, a lot of the coaching was handled by the players, and we'd use the Sunday basically that Sunday morning as a recovery session. So you'd go out after the game on Saturday, have a good time, and then we'd all roll out of bed and get to the club in our tracksuits, and that's how our recovery was done. Was done with our sort of slow jogging around with the kids. And so I always really enjoyed coaching, and so part of my sort of initial retiring when I was still in London was I would coach the first team. I did that. I did it with Ian Martin, just to sort of help out. And I loved it. I'd already got some coaching badges when I left school at 18, and I really wanted to do it. And in a way, I almost loved it as much as playing. But again, leaving London, you come to a new country. It's very difficult. You've got commitments, work, etc. And I know that I don't want to go into something without being able to do it properly. But I know you can also maybe something for me to drop back into and do a bit of part-time coaching or stuff here and there.
Yeah,
it's a real thing that I think I missed out on, and I'm still fascinated by it, and I read a lot about it, and I know and talking to you and other people who've coached, it's always really interesting to hear their perspectives on it. For example, listen to people like Mike Friday on the podcast, things like that. I love to hear about the type of culture and the type of mindset they have for helping people perform.
It is very interesting to hear all these different opinions, because there's lots of right ways to do this. And trying to figure out what that is for you as an individual coach is you have to go and crowdsource all this information and then try and figure it out and do something.
Did you, when you were coaching, because again, you were not sort of a big shouter when you were playing or anything like that, but you were obviously a very intelligent player and you knew the game a lot. One of the things I always find with coaching is you're trying to find your voice. Like, what is your thing? And you steal from people, etc. How long does it take you to find your voice, do you think?
Well, I coached in total for about 3 years. And if I'm honest, I'm not sure I did. I'm not sure I really found my voice by the end of that time. I was still fussing around with kind of almost imitating some of the coaches that I'd experienced as a player. Some of my stuff as well. I was generally on the quieter side. I'd generally talk to players rather than shout, but every now and again I'd have a kind of a shouty session if I felt it warranted it, to give some contrast and change it up a bit. But yeah, I'm not sure I ever really actually found my voice after 3 years.
And do you ever want to go back to it?
I'm not sure. It's exhausting. I found it exhausting, personally, to do that. So maybe, but probably in a smaller way, like as a coach, as part of a big coaching team, rather than be the lead guy.
Yeah, and that then you can take your time about the thing that you feel most comfortable with. Like, I think that's the other hard thing for you. Colfeians was right. You're the head coach. Backs moves, how are we doing this, how are we doing that, all the stuff that you have to, takes a lot to think about, rather than, okay, I'm going to be a specialist coach in this area and do that job really well. And
go really deep, rather than broad. Yeah, for sure.
Now, we were lucky, I think we had, with Andy Smith and then with Ian Martin, we had two coaches who were a great combination. Ian brought a lot of quite innovative things at that time down that we were maybe 2 or 3 steps ahead of the other teams in that division. And then Andy was just a super solid, classic old school rugby coach, but he knew a player inside out, so he could judge a player very quickly on where, on what they could do and how the whole team was going to function. His greatest strength was not only the sort of being able to analyze how a game was moving, but also his selection was very good. And that was half the battle, isn't it, with coaching and managing, is picking the right team. Yeah,
and then being able to communicate that.
Yeah.
Not only to the team that are playing, but the guys that you haven't picked as well.
Yeah.
And that was a challenge that I found really, really tough as well, because you've just got to be honest with them. You've just got to say exactly why you are picking them, why you're not picking them, and the things that you're looking for them to get better that will give them a shot at getting back in the team.
Yeah.
Tough one.
Yeah.
But you're here in Amsterdam now, and fully in the business world.
Yes.
So I'd like to hear a bit about that, and I think you maybe got some insights about what business can give back to rugby. We've talked on the pod a few times about what rugby things you can learn as a rugby player that you can use in business after you finish playing, but the opposite way around is also true.
Yeah, I mean, I work in I'm managing director of an advertising agency here in Amsterdam, and I've been in advertising since I left university. And for me, I've always been interested in that classic thing, which is what can sport teach business. And you read a lot of stuff about that. I'm interested in those sort of things, and so the first thing I was interested in was how do you create the cultures that you talked about earlier in sports teams in organisations, and in creative organisations like this, like I work in, trying to create a set of I suppose a little bit of a cultural, the rites of passage, some of the iconography, all those things are really, really important to a creative agency because it establishes a mindset. Because what you want to have is you want to have enough freedom to do creative things, but you want to understand that you're in a shared space, a shared mindset, a safe space for creativity and things like that. So a lot of the things that you might see in a team sport, rugby, football, whatever, I've always been really interested in bringing into a business context and saying, right, for want of a better word, how do you run this office like it's a rugby team, and how do you run it like it's with the discipline of a tour?
Right.
What's our 2 drinks?
Yeah.
What are those things that you have to do? What are the little phrases everyone uses around a certain thing? So you have a shared understanding, shared language, shared imagery. That really, really helps. But the other thing is also interesting. So when you also think about what sport can learn from business, that's something that doesn't happen so much. It's considered that sports people and those kind of elite performers, so that's the best in the world, and let's see what can. But obviously, in business world, and certainly in my world, I've always felt that there's something interesting that can be taken back the other way. I mean, just for the fact that if you're playing in amateur rugby, you've got a lot of different people with different skill sets and different ways of thinking. So we were playing with a lot of, you had accountants, you had consultants, you had firemen, you had film directors, you had businessmen, entrepreneurs. They all think in different ways, which is what makes them good at what they do. And I always thought there was something that could be learnt from those things. I mean, for example, we would work with, we would play with people who were analytical thinkers, and they would be able to solve problems in very analytical ways. There were others who were very much, they worked on emotion. They dealt with problems quickly. And that was all, and so they were both useful. And of course, for me working in a creative industry, I've always felt that creativity as a mindset is vital for sport. And one of the things you can see being levelled at teams, international teams, it's a little bit of perhaps even what you might argue sometimes at the top level of England and places like that. The players are robots. There's no ability for creative thinking. So, for example, one of the things that we work with here in this office is a mindset called we can if.
Right.
So you spend a lot of your time having things put in front of you. There's blocks, there's blockades, there's problems. You haven't got enough money, you haven't got enough time, you haven't got the right brief, the client doesn't like it, the actor can't do the thing doesn't do the thing that you want. And so people will say, well, it can't work now, it doesn't happen. Yeah. So you have to have a we can if. And I often think when I look at some of the professional sport or that sort of thing, an ability to be able to turn the situation around, look at it a different way and go, right, how can our weakness here be a strength? I think there's an old quote which is, we don't have enough money, so we're going to have to think. And I love that sort of thing. And you also see, with the idea that, when international rugby, the pattern play, and probably even in club rugby as well, to an extent, it becomes pretty similar. And so, again, the old phrase, if everyone's thinking the same, then someone's not thinking. So the idea that you can bring creative thought into that, even if you just start with the mindset, which is we can if, suddenly things open up. So, for example, you're playing away at Old Colfeians, like we did, with a back row, which is that tallest person is 5'8". You're playing the pack has got 6 front rows in it, didn't we? Yeah. And you're like, how are we going to deal with this? And so you need to be able to think, right, we're going to play like this. We're going to have to do line outs like this. We're going to have to more like this. So the idea to problem solve and that sort of thing, and using creative thinking in that way, I think is something that needs to be brought a lot more into professional sports from creative industries, and because that's the thing that can suddenly unlock great potential. And you can see it when a team does something different. Everyone goes, oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, it would be every week there would be another thing. You know, you've got the basics right, but this week, what's the thing that we're going to do that they're not going to know how to deal with? And when you drop down levels, it becomes even more important, because there, people know, you know, they know one type of defensive structure, or they know one type of attacking structure. So the moment you line up a bit differently or do something a bit differently, no one's going to be experienced enough to know what to deal with.
Yeah.
So the idea of
flexible enough
to deal with it. Yeah. So for me, you know, the idea of bringing some of that stuff into sport is really interesting. And we were lucky again, you know, Colfeians, there was a lot of people who were creative in that they wanted to try and find new ways to do it. And that's not people who are in creative industries. That's people who work for Deloitte or Accenture, or work in the fire brigade, or work in insurance or whatever. We were a hotbed of people who wanted to have an opinion and wanted to try things a bit differently. And I always think that for me is a big missed opportunity. You know, it's easy to look at professional sport and think let's learn from them. But there are interesting businesses and cultures and disciplines in the private sector or in the commercial world that are really useful back in when you're.
So how could rugby clubs or teams foster that kind of environment and generate these kind of ideas and players that are free to think and free to contribute?
Well, one of the ways and I do know coaches do this, so it's not as if I'm saying anything about it, but one of the things that you have to do is and there's a great book on this which is called The Beautiful Constraint, and that's where you create your own crises and you create your own constraints. So one of the great things about creative work is people think that it's great to have a completely blank page. That's a nightmare for creative people. Yeah. You want a really tight brief. So you can be very creative if someone says to you, you can only use 2 colours. Or, for example, Dr. Seuss, when you can only use words with 1 syllable. And so that's where, you know, ham and eggs comes from. So the idea of creating constraints means you have to think differently about what you've got. So, for example, coaching sessions where you can only pass a certain way, or you can only run a certain way, or you can only do certain things before you could, or you've got to work in a very tight space, right? And I'm sure that does happen a little bit, but it's the idea of forcing constraints on you that makes you work out how we're going to get out of this. You know, you got 2 minutes to go. You do a 2-minute drill. No one's allowed to talk, and you've got to keep the ball, right? So that there are, and I remember we used to do it at Colfs. You'd play touch with no ball, right?
Yeah, we did, didn't we? I forgot about that. Yeah,
and so suddenly, eye to eye contact is vital. Talking is vital. So the idea that you can build those kind of constraints into the way you prepare and perform and play allows you to then have much more ability on the field to not panic when things aren't perfect, because we know the moment the whistle goes, nothing's going to be perfect. And so that allows the mind and the body to prepare for them. That there's a thing which people say that people don't never step up. People only, when pressure comes on, don't expect people to step up. Expect them to revert back to how they've been trained. So similarly here, you've got to be able to prepare people for those things, and we do it here. There's a famous kind of approach to dealing, to problem solving, which is you bring in a separate team to look at the problem and assess whether you've done it properly or not.
Right.
It's kind of like a red team or something like that. It's known as done in all sorts of environments. And the ability then to sort of judge whether you're doing something properly and bring other people in to look at it. Is that
just to avoid like blind spots or things that you might not? Yeah. Right.
Any of the other people look at the thing you're doing. So when you have a bit of group think amongst your group, you're like, this is how we're going to do something. It's sometimes good to go line out. Let's get the fly half over and tell him what we're going to do in this line out, and vice versa. You haven't thought about this or whatever, or what about that? Even if it makes you think for a second,
and
extra.
And then maybe actually or
you bring a naive optimist into a situation who is really excited about this and knows nothing about it and is just going to try and help solve it.
Yeah.
And you know, suddenly they might say something like, which you've always thought is totally not relevant, and then you're like, well, that might spark something. So that was what was good. And I think, you know, when you have a lot of different mindsets or different experiences in an amateur team, that's what's great about it, because you don't have a lot of people who will think the same.
Okay, well, before we move on to the Roga Law Bore section, Taff, there was something came up in Sammy Bolton's podcast, episode 9, about eye contact.
God.
In a game that me and you played for Old Colfeians against him when he was at Cambridge.
Tabard.
No, it's Cambridge.
Cambridge.
It was definitely Cambridge, yeah.
Yes, I remember.
And I'm just wondering if you wanted to address that.
Yeah. I've listened to the podcast. It was, and I remember the moment he comes on as a sub, and I was with Sammy at university, and he comes on, he's spitting feathers. You could see him. You know, he comes onto the pitch. He hasn't got his glasses on, obviously, so he's kind of weaving his way towards the scrum because he can't work out where we are. We give him a little wave. We're over here. He comes in. He's spitting feathers. He's looking right at me, and I do remember it. It made me laugh when I heard him bring it up. And the thing is, I'm a bit like I don't like to fraternise with the opposition ever, especially if I know them. I'm a bit like, you know, Roy Keane is upset when people shake hands in the tunnel before games.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I'm in the Roy Keane camp on that, so I don't like it. The second thing is, definitely don't antagonise Sammy Bolton, who's spitting feathers. So I'm thinking, not only do I not want to talk to him, if I do make any contact with it, it's going to make him worse, and he's just want to kill me. And that, as again, being a lover, not a fighter, I thought best to just keep my head down here and concentrate as well, because also if I get caught up in any kind of shenanigans, next thing you know, he's going to do something awful to me. So I just kept my head down, pushed as hard as I could, and ran as quickly as I could to the next ruck, while he was still spitting at the back of our heads as we ran. Yeah, I remember that well, and I've never been very good at it. Famously, I remember there was a Westcombe Park game once where it all went off a bit, and I ran across to do so, and I hit the bloke in between his shoulder blades with the flat of my hand. And on a cold day, that could have been quite debilitating. But it was a nice warm day, and everyone just looked a bit embarrassed.
I'm not sure the guy even realised, did he?
No, and the referee just awarded a scrum, and we all just moved on with our lives. And that was about the height of my violence on the pitch. Like, for example, you were never a violent guy.
No.
Did you ever sense like we should be a bit tougher up there? I mean, we held our own, as in we didn't go backwards.
Yeah. No, not for me. Like, you can only be yourself on the rugby pitch, I think. And I think when I was much, much younger, it's like school age still, I got put under a lot of pressure to be this tough rugby player who plays in the front row and all that kind of stuff. And that was never me. Unfortunately, the game moved and changed into a much more technical, much more skills-based, much more fitness-based way, and that suited me much more. So I don't think so. I think you be the player that you feel like you should be and the person you should be.
Yeah.
And what comes of it will come of it.
And I knew I had to get tougher playing at Colfeians when I would come from university. And I think, I toughened up in terms of I wasn't going to go backwards, but I was never the guy, because I knew didn't know what I was doing when it got a bit roughy-toughy.
Yeah, and I was the same, mate. I was the same. So
I'd never felt like I let anyone down, but I was never going to go, get into any scrapes and that sort of thing. I mean, the famous Colfeians anyway weren't fighters. We were all like just not the face, not the face. That's the money maker. So the idea of us getting into scraps was a little bit off the to-do list. But yeah, it's interesting because you were never a violent player or you get into any other things, but there was never a sense that you missed out because I think again it would have taken away from the other stuff you could do.
Yeah, I agree. But it's this psychological thing about sport that I found really interesting. So it's great to have Sammy talk about it, and now from the flip side, what you were thinking at the time as well.
And also I am competitive, and I still need my competitive sport, and that's why I remember saying, I think I was saying to you the other day, when I was training properly and playing, I never got angry at work because I was too zen after all the physicality. And now I can get angry if I haven't had enough physicality. So playing football, going to the gym, doing whatever is vital for me, so that you have an outlet for it. I genuinely understand where professional players retiring, there's no outlet for their physicality and their and that testosterone. It can be hugely damaging. And it's no surprise to me how difficult it is, because all of us need somewhere to go with this, because you don't want to bring it home, you don't want to bring it to work, it's got to go somewhere. I don't know whether you feel the same.
Yeah, I do. And I don't think anything for me, apart from starting MMA or something ridiculous like that, which I don't think I'm going to do, I don't think anything will replace that team sport and that aggressive nature of rugby and what it gave, the release it gave me. But I've replaced it in some ways with running, which is very healthy for me. And
do you miss the team bit though?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was always kind of sat in the background a little bit, enjoying all the banter that everybody else was putting about. That was kind of my role within the team thing, and I definitely miss that for sure.
Because I'll still go and play and find a team, five-a-side football, touch rugby, etc. I need the thing to keep it going. The solitary sport for me, you'll do a bit of gym stuff, but it doesn't have the same magic as when you're in the throes of battle.
Relying on each other.
And even and again, this is my sickness, it's still like it's five-a-side on a Sunday morning. It's like, this is it, lads. We are not going to let each other down here. And everyone's looking at me going, you're 45, Taff, what are you doing?
Let it go.
Let it go. It's all right. It's gone. No, this is not. This is everything, these next 2 minutes.
Yeah. The psychology of a sportsman. Love it.
Oh.
Love it. Okay, well, listen, let's move on to the Roga Law Bore section of the show. It's just a bit of fun, but hopefully it will increase the knowledge of the laws across the board. And I don't think anybody fully understands them completely. So it's not serious, but it's just a bit of fun, Taff. So it's time to find out, Stephen Taff Corlett, if you are a Roga Law Bore.
Sir, are you sure that's correct?
Okay, Taff, here is your question. A dropout 22 is awarded at 39 minutes and 58 seconds of the first half. The kicking team take the restart after the clock has turned 40 minutes. The ball is kicked and goes straight into touch. What happens next?
Well, part of me remembers this from the Lions in '97 when Neil Jenkins does it at the end, and they think, oh God, and the referee blows the whistle and the game's over. So really, based on what I remember, that is, the game is over. However, I think, as that is about 50 years ago, the laws have changed, and I think it is now a scrum back on the 22 attacking side ball.
I'm going to give you that's correct.
Yes, or you have an option.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, do you want to explore more?
Well, you have the option of the line out, where the ball has gone out up into the 22 line. Or you can have a scrum on the where the ball was kicked in line with 90 degrees to the post, or 90 degrees to the try line.
Or
kick again,
or
I don't know. Bat first? What?
Okay, look, you're definitely a Roga Law Bore.
Yeah,
there's no question about that.
Thank you.
The fourth way the game that could restart, because it has to restart.
Yeah.
Because the ball has to end up in play from the 22. The fourth way is the receiving team could take a quick throw.
Yeah. That's what I meant. What I meant. I knew that.
I knew you knew that.
You could throw in from there or up to the line of the thing. Yeah.
Outstanding.
Thank you very much. Well
done.
Yeah.
Well done. Well figured out as well.
And actually, if they'd done that in '97, the Lions may not have won. But anyway, that's
by the by now. Yeah. Cool. Okay, let's move on to the stash questions.
Yeah.
What is your favourite piece of stash that you've ever received?
Okay. Good question. I do love stash. I love tour stash. The grown-up answer is the 2004 Italy top,
Yeah.
which is the sort of the waterproof top.
The waterproof one.
Yeah,
Can you just describe it?
It's got a blue sort of shoulder design, blue across the shoulders and white across the chest and stomach. Mm-hmm. It's got a very nice Italy 2004 on the back. It's very durable.
I think actually it was Italia 2004.
Italia, you're right. Italia 2004, our Colfeians tour one, and it's still with me today.
Really?
It's my favourite bit of stash ever. I absolutely love it.
Wow.
Yeah, it works brilliantly. Still looks good. Still fits me just about. I mean, it's tight around the shoulders, obviously, but you know. Otherwise, no, that's fantastic. Yeah, I love that one.
And that's the adult answer. Was there a childlike answer as well?
The real answer
Yeah.
is the 1993 Argentina tour poncho that we were given. So we went. So there was a thing. We were going to Argentina, as I said earlier, and we all got ponchos. And these ponchos were fantastic, Colfeian colours: blue, dark blue, gold, and the burgundy. And they had the Colfeian logo at the bottom, which was built just for the tour. And then on the underside, it had your number. So we wore the ponchos. Ponchos were basically your number ones. Mm-hmm. So you wore your shirt and tie, and over the top was a poncho for the matches. So we'd all turn up at the matches with these ponchos. It looked fantastic. And then there became, again, one of these rituals that you develop on tour. If someone flicked their poncho over their shoulder at you and exposed their under poncho, that was a challenge to drink your drink against each other,
right.
A full pint. So people were, this became the rule of law for the next 3 weeks. And so you'd constantly be trying to keep your way, not get challenged for this. But that poncho, what a great piece of stash that is.
And have you still got that?
It's at my mum and dad's in a bag there. But that's a great bit of kit.
Yeah. I've never heard of a tour poncho before, or a poncho being a part of any kind of rugby
legendary.
Kit, so.
Legendary.
Outstanding. Okay, now this next question: your favourite kit of all time? It can be any team from any era. You don't need to have represented them. Just as broad as you can like.
Well, I think just in terms of my sort of first falling in love with rugby and that sort of thing, and my early years watching and that sort of thing, I'd have to say the Wales kit of the 80s, that beautiful red with the white collar, the white shorts, etc. That one for me will always be just beautiful, and just the players like Jonathan Davis in it, Mark Ring, Alan Bateman, although he'd gone to the league, I think, just Adrian Hadley scoring against England at Twickenham '86, things like that. Those sorts of that was Rob Norster, getting thumped by Wade Dooley. That kit just for me was just looked beautiful, and whereas England's kit at the time, it was all, that white would always get muddy, it would always look dirty. That red kit just seemed to always look shiny whenever they were on the field. I mean, they were a bit crap. That was the problem with Wales. But for about 2 years, Robert Jones at 9 and Jonathan Davis, they were fantastic.
Yeah, good choice. Okay, well, Taff, that's the end of the interview. If people want to get in touch with you, maybe you can help them out with. Is there anything that you can help the audience with?
If there's any people out there who run extremely large corporations that need some global advertising or European advertising, please do look me up. You can get me at Stephen Abroad, which is Stephen with a PH, abroad, @gmail.com. And you can find me there. But I don't think there's likely to be many. But if you do know anyone who needs some world-changing advising, do let me know.
Yeah, could you give them like a 1% discount or something?
I can certainly do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very kind of you, mate. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for having me in your house and being a guest in your house this week. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thanks very much.
No, it's been great. Thanks so much, Tim. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks very much again to Taff. We've always talked a lot about the game, and I think that comes across during this interview. Interestingly, the point he was making about player creativity at the top level were written about this week by Paul Rees in The Guardian, and I've included a link to that article for you in the show notes below. He also mentioned A Beautiful Constraint by Adam Morgan. There's a link to that book as well in the show notes. If you've enjoyed this podcast, you could rate and review, but what I'd really like is if you mention it to someone in person the next time you're down your local rugby club. I'll be back with you next week, where my guest will be Greg Curtin. Curtin is a friend, a philosopher, and has also played rugby all over the world. Don't miss his stories from America, Europe, Africa and China in next week's episode. Right, time for me to get back to work. I'm off to somewhere truly special next week, and I need to get all my work done and podcasts produced beforehand. So until then, get out and play.